when they saw my house and we talked about it, we actually had a conversation. They were like, "Oh man, we wish we had known this house was on the market. Like you got to it first, we would have bought it." So
right. That's always good to hear, right? That's a good validation, right?
Uh-huh.
Hi, I'm Wyatt. And I'm Grace. And you're listening to Our Dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and we're coming with our Friday conversations with short-term rental investors that are willing to talk about their journey. Today, we've got Mr. C.E. Peck. And so, C.E., thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Shawn. First and foremost, I am filled with gratitude. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I feel super blessed. I know you're one of the number one leader in this space. So I also feel privileged to be able to have this conversation. So thank you.
Absolutely. And the gratitude is mutual, my friend. I love these conversations. I'm so grateful that people are willing to come on and share the ups, the downs, and everything in between on their short-term rental investing journey. And so, I always think it's a way to pay it forward a little bit, right? To have these conversations kind of in a public forum, and we just go unscripted and have a conversation. So I appreciate you being here. And so, CE, I always like to start with the backstory, right? I think every journey has a lot of lessons learned, but I love to hear your backstory, your background, and kind of what got you into the short-term rental game, because part of that is hearing somebody's story that we kind of relate to that has a similar background to us. And so I think that's always a really good place to start. So let's start there, and then we'll have a good conversation.
Sure. Before I start, I just have to do one thing.
My man, I was wondering where it was at. Okay, so those of you watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the platform, see, just grabbed the cowboy hat. So we got my first guest with a cowboy hat, and so this is awesome. This is already getting good.
We mean business today.
We mean business. We're rolling up our sleeves. We're putting the hat, the boots on. We're getting down to business.
Yep.
All right.
So as far as my background, I'm originally from Jamaica. I'll try to keep this short, but originally from Jamaica, and my parents, hardworking, God bless them, because they wanted the American dream for me and for themselves. And the way how they sort of perceived this journey was through hard work, which definitely aligned with your vision, Shawn. And going to school, studying, and doing the right thing in that regards. So I did all that. Went to school, studied hard. I became a dentist. Currently a dentist for the last 13 years. I've been practicing. So that's where I am now.
Yeah, and I know you and I had a few conversations before you really dove into this game, full speed. And one of your big concerns when we were talking was, man, I don't know if I've got time for this, right? This is because it is, you're running a dental practice, your wife is doing the same thing, and you guys are busy, right? And it's like, I didn't know how, like when we were having these conversations, you were really concerned how you were going to navigate building a portfolio of short-term rentals. And so, and you had to make sacrifices. Like it wasn't, there's time involved, right? There's time that you had to invest there. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I know that was a big concern for you on having to navigate the time involved. And when you and I talked, we're like, man, we want to help you compress that time. We want to help you get the most leverage out of the time that you are going to put in, so you don't have to go refigure out everything going on. But you still had to put in some time, didn't you?
Yeah. So, I believe in education, and I believe in rolling up your sleeve and working hard. So when I found Vodyssey, it seemed like the perfect pathway and sort of vehicle to kind of take me where I felt like I needed to be in the real estate space. But yeah, as far as time, I have 2 young kids. I have I'm a group practice owner. We own 30 plus practice, so that was pretty time consuming. So the thought of being able to make this work, I had to talk to you, Shawn, and we talked about having to being able to put the time in initially, and just getting your education level up and putting the work in, and making that pay off on the back end. And I did that. roll up my sleeve, went, as soon as I signed on to the courses, I jumped in, watched, almost every video at 2x speed, learned a lot. And that gave me a lot of confidence going into this space. It really did.
Nice.
And from my post you saw, one of the biggest thing about the Vodyssey space is just the community. And I think there's just so much people that basically everyone I've contacted through the Vodyssey space was willing to help me out and to answer my question. And I just think it's just one of those valuable things that it's hard to, I guess it's hard to put that out there in marketing. But yeah, I think it's such a positive, such a motivating space. I just, I can't, it can't go overstated or understated,
Yeah.
I'd say.
I appreciate it. I totally agree. Like as proud as I am of the training we put together, as proud as I am of the coaching, I always say by far and away our most valuable asset is the community that we have, right? The people that we're surrounding ourselves with. And, I always say, you want something done, give it to a busy person, right? Because busy people really, one, they just know how to roll up their sleeves and get after it. But also they understand leverage points, right? They understand how to tap into some great conversations with people, how to, leverage the knowledge and the trainings that are in front of them to be able to accelerate a little bit so that they can get the most out of the time that they are spending. And so as you started navigating that, you dove in the trainings, took advantage of some good conversations. I know that there was some of our community members that were really instrumental in, the market you chose, how to get it set up. Right. And so, there's people always ask me too, they're like, well, I'm always like the cost versus value. And I don't want this to be like a Vodyssey commercial by any stretch, but I always say you don't really know where you're going to get that leverage. You don't really know. It could be a conversation with somebody that you meet along the way. It could be a strategy or a tactic that you're following, and it's probably layers of a whole bunch of little things that are stacking into a lot of value and return on that investment, right?
Yeah, I can tell you, Shawn, I'm not affiliated necessarily with Vodyssey, but the costs, I feel like it should be, and some people probably not going to like it should be 4 or 5 times the cost. I mean, what I've gained through just the knowledge, the relationships that I built, the leverage, it's incredible. Just from the realtor part of it to the financial part of it and meeting all these important players. It was very invaluable.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you saying that. And that's obviously our goal here. And it makes me happy that we have that experience within our community. We've got such an amazing community. It's so fun. And so let's dive into the journey a little bit. So did you you guys you live in Connecticut. And so the market that you chose, how did you choose the market? Let's walk through that a little bit.
Yeah. So it goes back to my background. That's why I brought up, the fact that I'm, Caribbean.
Yep.
My family and I, we love the water. We love, beach areas and we love vacation in beach areas. So when we were deciding on what market, that was the number one market that we wanted to invest, at least as a first investment. So basically coastal markets. Yep. And with looking at all the different markets, we came across Galveston. And we came across Galveston through the Vodyssey network because we have a Vodyssey master list of properties. And one of the things that I like to do just for inspiration was just go through the property list and see what others are doing. And, I would, if I see something that inspired me, I send a message. I try to call that person.
Yeah.
So funny enough, I saw Susie Austin's property in Galveston and I was wowed. So I called her and I said, hey, listen, your property is amazing. I didn't know she was a realtor. I honestly did not. And, the one thing led to another in the conversation. And then I found out and, that's why we chose Galveston. And then Susie basically took it running. So
awesome. And it's always, I love hearing how and why people choose the markets. And like you said, and I I always stress, even though, because you guys were looking at it as more of an investment a little bit at first,
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking at trying to figure out the most investable markets, and we always try to dial it back. Like, what do you guys love? Like, what makes you happy, right? Where's the happy spot for the family? It was on the water somewhere. It's going to be on the coast somewhere, and then we get inspiration from other people. A lot of times, people overcomplicate it a little bit in the beginning, I believe, right? And I love having the conversation of how do we start, how we choose the market, because more often than not, because obviously we have you on the podcast to talk about the journey, but you're on here because you had some good success as well. And more often than not, the success stories, they start just like that. And so I love hearing that. And so we chose that market. We started looking at that market and liking it. So walk us through a little bit, like how long it took. And then, because I know the inventory was short, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're underwriting multiple deals to try to find the right one. And so how did that process go?
Yeah. So I would like to take you back a little bit. So
Okay.
about 2023, we talked, and it took me a while to kind of dig in, because I felt like I needed the knowledge. I had a very fortunate situation in my practice where I had some private equity, and I had a tax situation, and I found actually Vodyssey through Mike Pine and Kevin, because I was trying to take care of the tax situation. My accountant showed me the tax bill, and I was like, there has to be something. Unfortunately, I didn't make a move just because I'm the type that I like to research and then make a decision, but be confident in that decision afterwards. So I didn't get anything in the latter half of 2023, but I dove in 2024, and I said part of my vision was that get 2 properties this year, and I dove in. But as far as the process and finding the house, once I contacted Susie, I actually work with one of her, I think someone that worked on the team, Misty. Both great. The entire team is just from top to bottom. I highly recommend them. They know the short-term rental market. They know what investors are looking for. They're very familiar with Vodyssey. In fact, throughout the whole process, I literally threw the word Vodyssey as sort of like a shield and a weight. And I think, Shawn, you should be proud of that. I mean, everywhere I go, I was like, you heard of Vodyssey? I'm with those guys. But as far as
I'm hoping it's giving you the leverage you're wanting.
Well, I'm throwing it out there.
Good.
It's something to be proud of because we really do things the right way, I think. But once I got into the market, contacted Misty, we started looking. You're right, the inventory was pretty low. Again, privileged enough to be in a certain bracket, price bracket, that I was able to, find something that I like. The other thing is, my wife and I were in this together. We are in this together. However, her vision as far as how she wanted this is slightly different, and it's probably because of she's from Nepal, and she's all about being conservative and saving money, and not putting too much expense. And I have the knowledge and I'm coming from the perspective of Vodyssey. Like, if you can, you maximize the potential by putting as much into the experience as possible. So we had to sort of come to a compromise there, my wife and I, and that meant for me finding a house or property that didn't need as much work, because if it did, it would mean putting more into it, which my wife wasn't necessarily comfortable with. So our goal was to find something that was already nice that we can add the on top, like sort of the spice, like the Vodyssey spice, so to speak.
Right.
But we found something that we liked. I wasn't necessarily too in love with it. My wife was. We put an offer on it, and unfortunately, that didn't go through. Just like most real estate stories, right? Like it's not a paved road, unfortunately. This house was, 4 bedrooms, is right on the water. it was a canal house, but it had a broken bulkhead, and for some reason the it wasn't disclosed to us initially. We found out at the inspection, and the sellers refused to take care of it. So we backed out,
Yeah.
and literally the day that we backed out, another house came on market that was a little bit more expensive but newer. It was built in 2022. I saw the house and I was like, this is it. This is it. I live in Connecticut. That's, Galveston, Texas. I flew down the next day. I flew down for one day to go see this place because, you've been in this game a long time, Shawn. When you see the house, when you see that house,
Yeah.
you sort of know,
Yeah.
and you have that feeling. So I had that feeling with this house, and I went down the next day. I saw it, and I was like, "This is it. This is it." It was a newer house. It was basically built for short-term rental. The person prior to us used it as a short-term rental, and it was relatively successful. It just wasn't the group that was managing that particular rental. They were sort of the value brand in Galveston. They are the value brand, and I don't want to name names, and I don't want to upset anyone, but Susie mentioned that to me as well, that I should probably choose a different property manager. But yeah, the house is incredible. Yeah,
It is, and it's waterfront, right?
yeah. So it's not on the beach; it's on the canal. But we actually like that
Yeah.
because we are about, maybe I want to say, a short, like 2-minute drive to the beach.
Yeah.
But we have access to be able to put a boat or to do like water activities, which was important to us. Again, going back to the young kids,
Yeah.
being able to canoe or do something fun with them on the water. So we like that aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really critical. And you've mentioned Susie and Misty a few times. I mean, Susie's been on the podcast. And so
Yeah.
we're huge fans of Susie and her team down there, and just and really just short-term rental expert agents in general, right? They make that process where it's really nice to have that local expert that you can trust, that really understands us as investors, because we look at things different, right? And I think it's really good to talk about where you and your wife had a little bit different. Like, you're like, hey, I want to go like all in on everything, and then she's a little more conservative, and you've got kind of the gas and the brakes. That's also really good to have when you're looking at investments as well, because she can hear your side of the story of, hey, listen, we want to maximize it. Let's do the things that we can get a return. But she's going to pull you back and say, hey, listen, if you can't justify how I'm going to get a return on this, we're not spending the money, right?
Yep.
And so that those things can work well, as much as frustrating as they can be at times during the conversation for both of you. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
but when you team, as a team, it works out really, really well. And so, and you mentioned also, like, when you're diving in and you're doing and you just, you mentioned also, like, hey, listen, you had a big, a big taxable event happen in your business in 2023. And a lot of people will run in and just, they're like, hey, listen, I got to place this money, right? I got to buy this property. I think it's really important to note also where you said, hey, listen, I'm really conservative with this stuff. I'm happy to dive into the deep end after I know the deep end's safe, right? And so you did some work, but when you do that work and you lay that groundwork, then you feel comfortable when you do see that right house. You're like, you're like, this is the one. This one works, right? Without that groundwork, you don't really know. And it's funny when you mention that, because even before you probably ran all the exact numbers and everything else, but you already had a pretty good idea probably of the underwriting. When you see it, you're like, yep, this one's going to fit in. This one's going to work, right?
Yep. Speaking about underwriting, I can't forget my guy, Jacob. Man, he is, if you're part of Vodyssey, or if you're joining, and you don't use Jacob, I don't know, like, he is such an important resource. I mean, I send everything to him, and the detail in which he sends back, like, his response was another thing that was, definitely confidence building. So going in, I think you always say, you're going in with your eyes wide open or just knowledgeable. I felt prepared. I once I saw that house, I literally, that day when I went to Galveston, I told Misty, put an offer on the property because I was that confident.
That's awesome. I love it. And yeah, shout out to Jacob, who's our acquisitions manager. Those of you that are listening, don't know him or haven't met him. He is a huge resource within our mentorship group and coaching group, because he's there to review the properties, make sure you're not missing anything, make sure the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and really kind of look over your shoulder on the underwriting process to make sure that nothing's missed. And, and he, like right now, I'm buying property right now, and Jacob's the one that does all my underwriting for me at this stage, right? He just sends them to me ready to go. So it's he's a huge resource.
He's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you made the offer. Were you competing at the time? Did you end up having to compete? Because a lot of times when these properties, the right ones come up, there's even in, like right now, this is 2024, there's still limited inventory. And I'm curious if you ended up having to compete, or were you able to negotiate on your own and not have to have somebody in the background competing with you?
So because literally once the property came, I don't know, I don't want to get in, got into this, but sometimes some things are divine, right?
For sure.
Once the house that I mentioned first, we got off contract. This house came on the market. So in terms of competition, a lot of people didn't have the opportunity to look at this house before I made the offer.
Yeah.
And I knew it was a great house, so I made the offer very competitive. In fact, and we'll probably get into this, but my property managers, they have houses there too, and they're high end. When they saw my house and we talked about it, we actually had a conversation. They were like, "Oh man, we wish we had known this house was on the market. Like you got to it first, we would have bought it." So
right. That's always good to hear, right? That's a good validation, right?
In fact, I think they mentioned too the price that I paid for it. It should have been. They said $200,000-$300,000 more. So,
nice.
I mean,
nice. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so when was the offer? And then did everything went off without a hitch as far as inspections and closing?
Yeah. So when I went down, I made the offer that day. Misty put in the offer, and then everything was smooth. I actually went through another Vodyssey resource for the financing. It was Jeff Chisholm.
Yep.
And I mean, that when you talk about well-oiled machine, that was a well-oiled machine. I mean, they just go through the process. They keep you informed. So I mean, inspection was great. It appraised at the value that I paid for it. Actually, I think it appraised more. So everything went really smooth after that. And, again, I think it goes back to doing the homework and to have that knowledge beforehand. Sorry, my dog is in the background.
Sorry, we got a third guest on the podcast for a minute. Somebody's at the door, right? Yeah. Wrap it up. Yeah. So, So CE, when you dive into that and you get on the closing and you were buying an existing short-term rental, you said the management was kind of with a value brand. How much work and how much did you have to do with the setup of the property? Because a lot of times we buy properties and they're sold furnished, they're already short-term rentals, and a lot of times people will just take them, put them right back on the market. Our thought of this is we want to upgrade them, right? We want to do some things. So walk me through the things that you decided to do to kind of upgrade the property and when we ended up launching it.
Yeah. So the property was, like I said, brand new. It was built for a short-term rental, and actually the core, everything was pretty nice. Like, when I met with Mike, he actually, he loved the place. He said there's not much to be done. Just basically add, a little sort of decoration here and there just to bring it up to the Vodyssey level, but not much. So we didn't do much at all. As far as the property management group, I mean, they were also another resource that was recommended, via Susie. And they're in the luxury space, so they knew what they knew what the guests in that market, were looking for, and we sort of went over some things that the property may or may not be missing, and they said the same thing. It's not missing a lot. So I didn't do too much. I just went in and had the property management group. We inspected it together and just make sure, things were sort of in the right places. So again, this was just very fortunate to be able to get into a situation where I didn't have to do much. I still intend to, because a part of me still want to sprinkle that Vodyssey spice on it, because I think it still can use a little bit more of an experience. So, off season wise, because I bought it in right at the start of the main season.
Yeah.
So the plan was to, keep it rented now, not to lose the income from that. And then in the off season, go in and see how I can sprinkle a little bit of that Vodyssey experience on it.
Awesome. And that's a common question that we get. And so those of you that are thinking about buying a property and making that decision of saying, hey, listen, if it's an 8 out of 10 already, and you want to bring it to a 10 out of 10, but you buy it right before the peak season, which you did, it's really, really smart to put it on, collect that money for the peak season, and then pull it off and do a little bit of upgrading. Maybe, like you said, add some personality, kind of bring it to life, because a lot of times that's just some of the custom artwork that we do, some of the accessories that you're just kind of creating that experience. You do that in the off season, and you don't leave a lot of money on the table during the peak season, when you could just put it on and start renting it out, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when did you launch it, and how's it going?
Yes, I launched it literally after I closed, maybe like 2 to 3 weeks afterwards.
Okay. Which was when would that have been?
So I closed in March of this year, and then I launched it in April.
Okay, perfect.
And I use a property manager. Definitely would recommend property management. I mean, that's what you teach.
Yeah.
But for me, who I'm busy with my practices, it's a lifesaver. Literally, we had a storm the other day, and there was no thought about it. Like, I did think about the property, but having someone boots on the ground there who was keeping me informed, it just peace of mind. And I feel like if I'm going to do this, and if I'm going to scale, this is how I have to do it, because I'm able to now focus on what's bringing in the income now, but also focus on maybe going into different markets and doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. I love it. And I love, that's what I like to do, right? I always say, when, and you and I had this conversation, because one of your concerns was, do I have time for this? Right. I said, it's the time that you're going to invest is very front end loaded. It's on that acquisition side. It's on getting it ready to launch. But after it's launched, if you do have full service property managers, and you go through that vetting process, get the good ones in there, you don't really worry about the properties after that. Like, I mean, it's like, I don't look at or worry about my properties at all. I don't want them to turn into second jobs. I look at the P&L at the end of every month. But like you said, if a storm rolls through or something comes through, I know somebody's there handling it at a very high level, and they're going to make sure it's taken care of, and they're going to keep me informed on what's going on, but I don't have to deal with it.
Yep.
Yeah. And so what's the plans? You said you want to do 2 this year. So we're into July. So like, where are we at? Are you ready to roll up the sleeves and find another one?
It's funny you said, like, literally, maybe I want to say I started looking again in June, and currently looking in the Myrtle Beach market, again, another beach market. Yeah. This one is going to be more of a lifestyle, because it's a little closer to Connecticut. It's a quick, short, hour and a half flight, and it's going to be a condo, because that's the market that's there in Myrtle Beach. But yeah, it's still, I basically just jump right in again.
Yeah, so. Good. I that doesn't surprise me at all. It's it's like, okay, we got the one, we're launched, we're going, things are going good. We're right in the peak season. People are liking the property, and not a lot for you to do until, possibly off season. And even then, even when you do an upgrade on it with artwork and some accessories, it's not a huge job, right? And so now we're finding and I love Myrtle Beach. We're going to, keep you guys near the water, right? You're off the water a little bit inland, so you got to get back to the water. That's awesome. So we'll do that one this year, probably get that one launched and hit the goal of getting 2 operational, continue to build that. And so, and then anything like, do you have an idea, like, are most of these going to be sprinkled around as lifestyle assets? Do you guys have an idea of going, you're from Jamaica, your wife's from, where'd you say your wife's from? Nepal?
Nepal.
Nepal. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are, or have you thought of going international, or you want to
Yeah.
keep them kind of domestic that are closer?
We've definitely thought about going international, and probably Jamaica would be first because I do have properties there. Property. But I just wanted to make sure that I work on, building a successful, process here and learning a little bit more about the Vodyssey experience, and maybe even applying that into. I know you've had a few of the members that have gone international. I saw.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. I mean, that is the goal. And the goal is to scale basically. That's sort of my next step is to see how far or how much I can scale this. But like you always say, you have to figure out what your goals are and where do you want to be, and then you kind of scale to that. So.
Yeah, it's good. And it's funny with the international, we're getting a lot more members that are buying international at this stage. And really, there's just two differences, and they're on the front end. It's what are the property ownership rights for non-citizens of the country, or if you happen to not be a citizen of the country you're going to invest in, and then what are the lending options? Because some countries you don't have as favorable lending options as we do here in the U.S., and so you're paying cash, right? And so, but everything else is universal. Hospitality is universal, customer experience is universal, setting up these great experiences, delivering those experiences, marketing, all that's universal. And so the game is, and hospitality is worldwide, right? And so it's really, and you guys have ties internationally. I figured that was probably on the radar somewhere.
Absolutely.
Awesome, CE. I love these conversations. First and foremost, like we started off, I just want to thank you for being willing to come on, have these conversations, and just talk about the journey, talk about your background, and it's just fun because a lot of times it's really inspirational for other people to hear. When we hear that somebody struggled with something, it's okay. It's fine. Like if I'm going through the same struggle, I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one, right? And so these conversations are important, and I appreciate you being willing to have them. At the end of all the episodes, I always kind of put you guys on the spot and say, if you had to go back and give yourself some advice, right? If you had to go back and say, okay, before I started this, here's the advice I would give myself, my younger self diving into something, what would that be?
So it's the cliche answer, but do it sooner. I wish I had done this 10 years ago, because I feel like I would have been able to scale to a place where I would probably be a little bit more secure in that space. But hindsight is 2020, so I am very happy with where I am now, and I'm happy that I invested in Vodyssey, and without it I wouldn't be as confident, and I don't think the road to where I am would have been as paved. So.
All right. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. And cliches are cliches for a reason, right? Because they're very true, right? We're like, okay, it's by far the number one answer is, man, I wish I would have started sooner. So, there's always reasons why we're waiting, right? There's, we can always justify waiting around forever, but there's never a perfect time to dive in. There's never a perfect property to buy. There's never a perfect market. And the key is trying to mitigate your risk as much as possible and having a plan and a process to follow that you can hopefully accelerate past some of those imperfections, right? Because, if we're always waiting for the perfect time and the perfect market, the perfect property, it just doesn't happen. I've been doing it for 24 years and I've yet to find it. So maybe it'll happen in the future, but I've never seen the perfect time at any given stage. But looking back, they all seemed like pretty good times to buy. Because time is that great equalizer, especially in real estate, and wanting to have those properties starting to mature and building those portfolios. That's really where we get our best leverage from. And it's the hardest thing to leverage is that time, because we just have to get started. So awesome, CE. Well, my man, I appreciate it. I love the Vodyssey logo on the background. I love the cowboy hat. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And so it's so fun to be a part of this journey with you guys. And so, and thanks so much for joining us on the podcast here.
Thank you, Shawn. Just one thing before we go. When we talked last time, I mentioned that one of my goals was to come on the podcast, and I'm so happy that this has come to fruition. I'm going to put one more goal out there in the world.
Okay.
It's to be able to work with you on a massive project. So I'm looking forward to,
Love it. I love that we just put that out there in the universe. We just put a stamp on it. It's official, and nothing would make me more happy, my friend. And so I love doing those things. And so I'm looking forward to making that one come true as well. Okay. All right, you guys, as always, I know how valuable your time is, and I always appreciate you joining us and listening and being part of these conversations. We hope they're as useful to you as they are for me. Like I have these conversations a lot of times, I feel like selfishly, because I enjoy them so much. And so I hope you guys do as well. If you know somebody else that wants to walk into the short-term rental game and would love to be a part of these conversations, share the show. Those things really do help us. I don't run ads. I don't have sponsorships on this show. So the only way we grow is if you guys share it. So if you, whatever platform you're watching or listening on, if you like it, review it, give us a thumbs up. Those things help as well. And you guys know the routine, the final, and the most important thing I ask you at the end of every episode is pick that one thing you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodyssey.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.